No, correct. And we see that constantly. And again, as we talk about at times perspective, people have different perspective over time, over cultures, over countries. All of those things influences the way one interacts with knowledge, regardless of what that knowledge is.
Remember on my email.
What's that?
Or your email.
Yeah, correct. Matter of fact, did you notice how I introduced that? You you notice how I introduced that, and that that's basically we'll just talk a little bit about that, because that concept of the canonization and scriptures inspired or canonized. I think last time we talked with Xavier, that was one of the issues we talked about, the canonization, when it was canonized, why the apocryphs aren't part of that canon. All of those things are really great, valid points. So go ahead, say something.
I know. I was just playing.
Your sound comes in and out sometimes. I'm not sure why.
Oh, it might be me sitting back and forth.
Okay, okay. You got one of them fancy mics.
I put my microphone back together.
Okay. It's probably one of those direct mics where if you talk sideways and stuff, it not picks it up.
It's hopefully it's facing me now. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah. That's yeah.
It was just really innocent to thinking of X in those discussions and getting into sort of like my point, I think, in my email, in the sense of it's always interesting again when I always just point out the fact that it's exclusive to people, and that exclusiveness is always the thing that I point out to be more ego, as where I just wouldn't see God excluding us.
Well, yeah, when you say, and that was an interesting point, when you say exclude, because I looked, there was a comment you made a long time ago that helped me do a little research and think about things. And it was about when we were talking about spiritual texts and how some spiritual texts existed before the Bible and documented in writing before the Bible. And then you said things like God don't need words, man need words. Then that helped me understand why men were writing their experiences about God, because they needed it. It's the way they dealt with it properly. And I really, that when I think about that helped me frame the real reason and value around the Bible, and the need for a canon, and the need for a clearly defined set of standards that can be carried forward, because the development of the other standards, as you mentioned, which was really powerful, carried with it a lot of time and cultural influences that, again, was adapted and modified based on the time period or even the cultural experiences. So that really helped me to say, hey, that's powerful. And that makes sense why these books were written. They were written with the intention of helping people understand man's relationship with God. And that was beautiful. But then long ago, when I read the Bible, I came to believe and understand that the Bible is God's relationship with man. It's a story told from a different perspective. And what I mean by that is that even if we look at the creation process, A lot of the stories we're told in other spiritual books about creation were different than what's in the Bible. And I think I've shared to you a time ago that one of the things in reflecting on this thought that came to mind is I begin to understand a lot of the reasons why there's a lot of nots in the Bible. Why?
That's
Yeah. Do not do this. Do not do this. Do not do this. Because in 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, it says one of the things is to set matters straight. Okay, to make correction, make adjustment, to clarify issues that has been permeated through times, through writing, through oral misunderstanding, through distortion. And that was for me a really element that helped me say, hey, okay, I can understand why God would want to inspire a book that makes corrections and adjustment to the existing knowledge that was there in the world at the time. So I'm going to stop right there and take a breath, so you can.
And so you're saying, like, beyond inspired text, you're saying that this is an inspired book.
I'm going to just say it's. I'm going to say the text is inspired. The book is canonized, and that the issue is, if you go back to.
Well, I guess I'm going to ask a question. Does canonized mean the truth for all?
The canonized mean the truth of God. Now, the choice is whether it all accepted. And again, the point you make is a great one. And the reason the concept of the canon is very interesting when you look at the canonization of the Bible. We tend, at least in my research, it showed that there were certain acts taken at certain council that stamped what we understand to be the canon today. But what's interesting, and when you really look at it, all of these books that were identified to be canonized were accepted truth, accepted books long before, Constantine and his gang of marauders came together to, in their mind, define it as the final canon.
We've had this discussion before. Yes, there were previous canons that included books that are included within what would be considered the true canon. But again, one is the.
Yeah, you're still coming in and out. You're still coming in and out.
That also might have been my voice. I was at a concert last night.
Oh, okay. So you were screaming and
I was kind of talking people and stuff,
Oh, okay. All that marijuana that was flowing around.
It was a good.
Yeah, I understood.
It was a good time.
There you go.
The importance of the canonization for those, again, who accept it and now take it as so, for me, there's no argument with. It is always in being able to see the truth within other scriptures, other inspired works, or for me, there's God always whispering in the ear of every man. And some listen deeper. Some listen deep enough to be able to contemplate E equals MC squared. And in a sense, write their scripture within a mathematical sense. Now, those of us that are geeks study and see Einstein as a prophet, if you will. Now, because it might not deal with, again, these spiritual matters told in the sense of story, the point for us is that it talks of balance and a harmony and a perfection of the universe. And so I want to use something like Einstein to really even separate out in the sense of what we may think of religion. But my point is what revealed truth is, revealed knowledge, that we are all capable of sitting down and listening to God whispering in our ears. For me, this is the beauty or the good news of Gospels, is to say that there is a truth, there is a way. And now, can you now do it? And so you say something I think that is beautiful, and kind of say, why are there all these nots or don'ts? And again, as I point out in these same texts, there's like 42 don'ts, right? And the point is to try and help people discern what the sensitivities of negativity are, because you can't necessarily just put a pointer on one thing. Because as I've had to learn, it's like, damn, sarcasm is negative. I thought I was just being funny, right? But and so the complications of this, it is one thing, and then what happens over time is just like what we were talking about with the N-word, right? What we open with, and the sense of saying now things will have different meanings over time.
Right.
So scriptures are always being written, because we're always trying to, in a sense, to speak to our people within our time. Now, it does not mean for me, and I think what Christ really demonstrates within his teachings is that he comes along to talk to people who already have scriptures. And he like, listen, let me talk to you in our time. And so if you know, and I'm just being real here, Christ in his day would have been a rapper. He would have been talking in a way about the society and the system around him that would have caused the system to like come after him. And this is the importance of understanding how the meek shall inherit the earth, is because they're not so caught up in the trappings of, the world of riches, so on, whatever. And so they're really kind of present and today and having to deal with now. And so the good news is being able to come into this moment and treat people in this way right now. But that keeps being told as you read scriptures of the different time for people and so on and so forth. Now, I will say that I don't knock what someone has to say in this is what their religion is. I will observe you in this moment. And if you lack love, if you lack acceptance, then for me, you lack the understanding of what that revealed truth is.
Well, I mean, you make a couple of things that is powerful. Is one of them is, as you just said, when they asked Jesus, "What's the evidence of your followers?" He basically said, "You'll see love. You don't see love, you don't see me." Okay, and that's very powerful. When they ask him what all these commandments, all these stuff that we do, which one is the most important? Which one should I focus my time on? He said, there's only two. And there's only one action across the two of them is love. Love God and love your neighbor. Love your brothers and sisters. So what you've said there is beautiful. But one of the things you said that I want to get some clarity on, and it goes back to the N-word. The understanding changes through time, but the truth didn't change. So in that respect, the true meaning of that word, the core understanding, the why it was developed, didn't change. Over time, it diminished. The context of it was covered up to where it has not the same meaning today.
Well, I mean, even in the dictionary, I don't think it has the same meaning. When I came up and read it in a dictionary, it meant an ignorant person. And today, when you read it in a dictionary, it's this other kind of whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, now they trying to.
There you go. The same thing again, and that's why I love what you said. It's the same thing as we look at text at our religious text or scriptural text, because like you said, over time, the cultural influence begins to create a narrative that people can live with at the time, that people can view themselves as being successful at the time. Okay.
I would say yes, that the narrative that could be used, but again, I agree that it doesn't take away from the beauty of the truth of the scripture.
Absolutely.
But for me is when it begins to get twisted as a way to control folks,
Right.
as to make, again, the ritual more important than the meaning.
I agree.
And so, like, don't wave your cross around for me. Again, if your heart lacks love.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. I agree with that, because again, not only Christian faith or other Jewish faith or Islam, all of them, as we always come back to the core. If everyone practiced the love that is a basis of their scripture, because you go into all those scriptures and talks about the same principle Jesus talked about. Let's just show love and respect with each other. It will be great. But everybody then begin to, and I think it's what you're alluding to, they begin to exclude people from this concept of love. So when we begin to compartmentalize our expression of love, then it becomes a challenge. Because even like you said, yes, Jesus came to the Jews, but he knew that he was not going to stop at the Jews. They just started with the Jews because at the time the Jews were supposed
in front of.
Exactly. So but he knew the whole concept was about everyone. And you make a great point. And the point that you made, commented earlier, and I'm expanding a little bit on, is that each one of us have a direct interaction with God, can have that direct interaction. The scripture says he was going to put it in our hearts. He was going to move the circumcision from the genital circumcision that was imposed in the time of the Jews, and a circumcision of the heart. That is, he was going to embed this knowledge and give us that opportunity for us to surface it, for us to deal with it and manage it, to make a choice. And I think that's what you alluded to earlier. All of us hear, not all of us listen. It's there, like you said, the bumps in the roads are there. The conversation is going on. We're just sometimes not listening. We just choose in that moment not to listen. We choose at that time not to listen.
That could be again a mindset to have to really go at, as opposed to even having to take someone's scriptures out of their hands, as much as it's to ask, are we talking again in love? Are we talking in right and wrong? Right. Which again is just to be more adversarial than it is to be understanding. I was having a discussion with the same young man I was talking about before. And, and my buddy's always talking about how he gets into arguments with people, Trump supporters and so on and so forth. And I'm like, well, you kind of take it personal. And you let it be an argument. So I'm going back and forth with this young man, and he's like, he's on this point. And me, I'm well studied. I read news and everything and whatever. I also kind of understand sort of where I am in things, and so I don't pounce on folks
Right.
as much.
As you used to,
Yeah. And so he's like, well, no, they've proven that there was a guy who worked for the government who, excited the people and took them into the Capitol. And I'm like, no, that has not been. He's like, yes, they proved it. I know that. I was like, okay, I was like, okay, so what is your evidence? He was like, oh, my phone is dead. Okay, my phone is pretty loud. And so I'm like, so again, what is your evidence? He's like, oh, I don't know. I say, okay, so you're asserting that this guy, but you have no evidence. Well, I have evidence to tell you that the guy is actually suing Fox News and all these people who have lied and said that he was just a Trump supporter and thereby he did not, and that there's evidence that has convicted these people on actual seditious conspiracy.
yeah.
And so there's this evidence I can point to you on these different things. And now I'm asking you, what is your evidence? And he was like, "Oh, I'm just telling you that, I was like, I hear you in the sense of what you're just telling me, but what you're telling me is your opinion.
Yeah.
And I get that that's your opinion. That's how you feel.
Right.
We're not talking about how you feel. We're trying to have a discussion about what is. And this is what this nation is based on. Now I'm summarizing, of course, our entire conversation. I was like, listen, and I was telling this young man last night, there's these important books called Common Sense and the Age of Reason I've talked about before, that go to the actual founding of this nation. And it's basically saying, right, that if we see each other in this respectful manner, then we can deal with each other in this way of debate. And how we debate is that we present evidence. Right? And again, it just seems like what, but again, if we present our evidence, now we have the ability to say whatever. But now, if you lack evidence and I have evidence, then there is how we determine who wins the debate, or who has the best evidence that other people can see for themselves. This is still, again, the scientific method to say, listen, I hear you, but you demonstrate it in a way so that now I can see it for myself. And so I try, and even when I speak to people about things, I don't try and speak to it from a way of where I don't think you can experience it or find it for yourself. These are all things you should be able to find and see within your own heart, even within your own life. You can look back and see when you were in a loving way and how things were working out, and when you were in a rejecting, fearful way and how things were working out. That's for somebody to look in their own memory banks and find for themselves. But I say all that to say that that's sort of where a lot of people begin to come from, is that they come from this sense of defense of what it is, they're whatever they believe, as opposed to using your brother to sharpen your skill set. And so as I telling the young man after, later on, and of course, because I kept hitting him with evidence, I'm like, listen, the importance of you to me is that if there's something I don't know, if there's something that you can introduce me to and whatever, the better you sharpen me. And then I have to go research it and find it for myself. And so now I'm ready for the next conversation. I'm now, in a sense, armed with my evidence to be able to say, well, this is why I hold this perspective. You may help sway that, change it, perfect it, but me not just stand on it ignorantly. And that's the importance, again, of saying, like, well, God sent you to me. And in that, I'm here to listen to what it is that he sent you to me for. And when I find myself in argument, right, and I find myself in ego or in ignorance, and that can help me find my spirit again.
Yeah, no, that's That's deep, because I think the point you make about facts or evidence is very powerful, because most people today don't think they need evidence. They believe, because like Trump said, it's true because I said it. I said it, so it's true. And we see that in a lot of other areas, even with religious teachings today. And I think the important thing of what you said is iron sharpens iron, as scripture says. And it goes back to be willing to have that interchange. Be willing to, as the scripture said, be willing to have a defense for what you believe. Be willing to share it. Not to the fact that your intent is to destroy someone else's defense, but to simply share your defense. And as you said, hey, if there's some clarifications I need, I can see it. I can discern it. I can discern it because I can see it's in harmony with what I believe to be truth. It supports, it adds to, it doesn't distract from. And I think that's what happens a lot. People think that it's okay for me to just say something and it be accepted as truth. And it goes back to something you said long time ago, is everybody have their truth. And when they state it, they believe it has to be everybody's truth. And in there lies the struggle or the issue. And we see that today. We see that today with the gender and the sexual orientation. As a matter of fact, a guy made a comedian last night made a joke. He said there is something called a something moth, a chameleon moth, something moth. And he says this moth identifies as this. So rather than staying within what it is, I'm a moth, and I can't call myself a bird. I can call myself what I want to call myself. This is what I am. And it's very interesting, because we see that attitude today. I said it, it's true. And if you don't believe it, I'm not going to provide you evidence. I'm gonna just shoot you. I'm gonna just beat you up. I'm gonna just create havoc. I'm gonna create disturbance that distracts from my stupidity, just so, like you were saying with the young man. Let's just change the subject. Let's just change the subject. Let's just talk about something else. And you're coming back to say, no, let's finish this. I'm trying to understand. No, let's change the subject.
You already know. I call that dancing. Like there's like, oh no, I'm saying you're saying that there are what you can say that there are exciters in the crowd. I said yes, I'm saying there are exciters. They're called Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, and they convicted them of seditious conspiracy. Those were the inciters. So, it wasn't just them. I'm saying if it wasn't just them, again, that was the leadership. That's what the evidence shows. It wasn't just them. I'm like, well, have we changed it now? Before you said the exciter was this federal government person or whatever, but this proved to you that it wasn't the federal person or whatever, even though you keep saying it is and you have no evidence. But now you're saying that there are other exciters that weren't the people who were just convicted, yet you still have no evidence. And so you're just going off of your feelings, not off of facts and evidence. And, you can argue it all you want, but as you said at home by yourself, logic. Your own mind sits there and you know the truth.
Well, you know, one of the things that I find fascinating about all of this different perspective and what happened there is everybody is what I'm trying to say is they're not focusing on the core element of every one of them had a choice. Everybody out there had a choice to act in love or selfishness.
Well,
Or love of what? And I'll come back to that. Love of what? They acted in love of a man rather than in love of justice.
believe in magic.
What's that?
People believe in magic.
Okay.
They believe in the sense that they're cursed or these outside forces remove their choice. If they did not exist, or if this did not happen, then I would not have had to do it's again full circle back to the N word. If they had called me that, then I wouldn't have beat the holy hell out of them.
Right.
And it's like, well, I get you being upset, but beating the holy hell out of somebody,
Yeah.
you locked up. But point is that there is this lack of responsibility
Right.
that people, I think, have today of where you made me mad.
Correct. Correct.
You make me happy.
Correct.
And that kind of outside view is trapping people because, no, you're supposed to act right. And if you act right, then I'm gonna be good. And you're like, well, damn, I'm just trying to be me. and folks don't get it's like, well, you're telling me that you really don't like me. Because if only I was not me, then your life would be good. But point of that is that people's belief of a powerlessness in their lives is what makes them turn to this violence, this anger, and this hatred.
Right.
This is what we see in the sense of all of these European Americans that has all this privilege and all this wealth acting out and behaving in this way because they feel a lack of. It's like, well, what? You believe that some outside force is when you get all the evidence, your news channels, all the facts that they're lying to you. But again, because they believe in magic, here's this magic man that can do no wrong. And everything he do is right. And he's sent by the Almighty. I mean, when my friend told me that, I was like, wow. Because, again, I wanted to have open dialogue or whatever. So my evangelical Christian friend, when he told me again, like the depth of what they believe that Christ sent him, because it's been put in the religious terms of abortions being the degradation of the society, right? Like, and here's a classic point for me is that so now there's this like moral issue on abortions, and so they will vote anybody who will make abortions illegal, and they will not talk about or address why a young woman in the richest nation on the face of the earth in time as we've known it, why a young woman would choose to not bring a life into this world, and why successful women would choose to wait until their mid-30s to have children. What is it about the society that are making our women make this choice? That's a deeper moral question to ask than outlawing the act itself, because you're not still going to remove the fear of these people. you're still going to have abortions go on. You're just going to make it more dangerous and so on and so forth. But again, if we were to actually have the true deeper question, to actually have real debate, to actually be looking for understanding, then it would be a conversation that the nation could have, as opposed to believing in magic, and that if we just get the right person in and just do the one right thing, then presto changeo, everything will be great. And again, like this lack of responsibility, of the greed of the nation, that here we are again, like as followers of truth, we understand that we should be doing things that are not done in imbalance. And greed is imbalance, right? Something that we'll say imbalance is disharmony. We should not be sinning. And again, if you look at sin, you'll find that there's the correlation of disharmony and sin in different traditions. But point is that in order for a society or a tribe or a system to be able to be successful, is that it has to act within harmony, the benefit of all, if you will. And so we have all of these corporations acting as people. And in acting as people, they're saying like, well, don't do us harm. Don't do us harm and whatever. We get a say. And so, but we get a bigger say than everybody else. And that bigger say now makes McDonald's pervert the food system. It's not McDonald's, just McDonald's, of course.
Honestly.
Makes the Sacklers, Pfizer, Purdue, whoever, pervert the pharmaceutical industry to where they, again, there's a great documentary called Painkillers. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. They show again how just pure greed, right? These people are partying about all the money they make in or whatever, and people are just dying in the streets, just falling out all over the place and whatever, all throughout white America. Right, these same Trump supporters and whatever, and this greed is just killing us. It's right in our faces. And instead of taking responsibility for accepting the lie that's being told that corporations are people too, and thereby greed reigns supreme, we allow every business to pervert their whatever industry they're in.
Right.
Everybody's the cigarette industry today.
Yeah, what you've just said is so real. And again, I go back to something that brings it to life for me. All of these things are prophetic. The Bible talks about people reaching a point of not coming to any agreement, not even wanting to discuss, where greed, money is just more important than anything. You step back and say, a company chooses to lay off hundreds of thousands of people to protect its bottom line profit margin. Not to say, how do you justify having $100 billion in the bank and laying off 100,000 people who combine in 5 years probably make $6 million? How do you justify that morally? How do you? The only way you do it is because you lack any moral. Just like you said, your company's in trouble. You're going to go into bankruptcy. A lot of people will do that, and you give yourself a $25 million bonus. Now, what level of arrogance, selfishness needs to exist for someone to feel that's okay? To walk away from that feeling, oh, wow.
Yeah, but the young man was like, how about we create a company That's what these people do. How about we create a company that believed in paying people fair wages and so on and so forth, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, you can create a company that, did whatever, blah, 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 but they have to compete against all these people who ain't got to do it. So I was
Right.
like, you know what? What if we had like a governing body of people who could come together and talk about what was the best thing to do for the larger collection of people? Wouldn't that be nice? He's like, yeah, that would be nice. I said, we got these things called legislatures,
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly.
right?
They exist.
And they exist, but for some reason they aren't making these kind of decisions. So maybe that's the discussion that we should be having. Opposed again being lost into all these nuances of who went into the Capitol, and if blah blah blah. How about we discuss why our healthcare system not a health care system, right? Why can't we talk about the fact that our food market or food industry is not actually safe for producing healthier choices or better food?
Right.
They're just creating more unhealthy food. We can't have those conversations.
Right.
Why is that? Is it because, again, we don't understand who we are? And I say that because this little crux here to me of calling a corporation a person means that you have no idea of the spirit that lies within you,
Right.
the light that lies within you. And the founders of this nation, again, talk about or their belief that within all men is this good or is this light. And if they're educated, if they are free within their spirit in this liberating way to search out truth for themselves, that they will come to the enlightened decision of doing what is best for all. And thereby, this is why it's supposed to be a government for the people, by the people, of the people. Yet they put in corporations, and that is not a person, meaning that there is no light at the center of a corporation. There is a profit margin.
Right.
And they're corrupting religion to do it.
Well, again, scripturally, there are one and the same. No, there's two things I want to mention. One is, like you were talking about food. Yesterday, we went to Monrovia. We have a friend visiting from Atlanta, and she said she told us that Kevin Hart started a chain of restaurant, vegan restaurant.
Yeah.
So we went there. I mean, we went there, and it was interesting because one of the things that they were talking about is how did this non non-meat chicken get the texture of chicken? How did it get there? How did this non-meat hamburger get the texture and flavor of hamburger? And I was explaining to him, I said, that's one of the things that's really, for me, somewhat concerning, because we don't know what chemical interactions are being created to create this substitute with the premise that it's better for us. Again, the idea of a vegetarian is the true, in the essence, that what it is. And that's when God created us, that's what he gave us, the natural things and the way to eat it, not to transform it into something else that makes us think we're eating. It's like what one of the young man said. He said, if you don't tell me what it is, if you didn't tell me this was vegan, I wouldn't know. So I believe I would be eating a hamburger, or I believe I'll be eating chicken. And in there lies the premise around a lot of the religious teachings. I don't want to know the truth. I want to believe what you tell me. I don't want to investigate. Okay, I just want to be accepting. And in there, and it was a very interesting point. And the other point, so the point you're making is um, our food is being perverted, and now they recognize that the bad food that they were giving us, people are rejecting. Now they're creating an alternative bad food with the same objective, profitability. Okay, Kevin Hart, good man. I'm sure he's not in here for making all the black folks and everybody healthy. I'm sure that wasn't his. I'm gonna do this as a pro bono. I'm gonna do this with a minimum margin where I can just make a living, and I'm gonna pay all these young people a lot of money so they can live. And I'm sure that wasn't his motivation. But the other point I want to make, and I got to run in a minute, is Trump. I agree with your evangelist friends that Trump was sent by God, but for a different reason. He was sent to demonstrate how horrible human government can be, how selfish and destructive human government can be, how painful following man, worshiping men, idolizing men, how destructive and devastating that can be. Again, I say that because the Bible says they would have to come to a realization that self-governance, alienating from God, is not a good way to live. And he demonstrates that just perfectly. I'm sorry, this man is perfectly demonstrate how, I don't know what the word, how bad it is, for us to begin to idolize men and worship men.
One, I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Again, idolizing is a problem, period. It's called idolatry, what it is that we're talking about. And it's in the sense, again, within the Bible, we talk about the Antichrist. It's explaining the idolatry of said individual. And there is where as you see me kind of squirming or whatever in this last little bit of where I want to defend the founding of this nation. And to say is that what they saw or what they envisioned was people having the freedom and the ability to discern and get this spiritual truth for themselves. And if that could take place, if people had freedom of religion, right, to practice without being forced in, whatever, to practice their religion in the sense of their love, and that would be this great nation, meaning that it should never be to worship any outside thing. It was important that individuals get developed. Liberation of moksha, which is again a yogic term, is built into what this nation is supposed to be. It is not supposed to be idealizing one man, which is why as a president, that would always be changing because it is never supposed to be about him.
Right.
And this is what they're doing with Trump. They're
Right.
perverting what this nation is actually supposed to be. It ain't supposed to be about one man or even one type of ideology, which is why there's supposed to be a two-party system, right? In the sense of a left or right, up or down, just knowing that there's opposites that have always existed, right? And you see them swap. Liberal Republicans, conservative Democrats, now conservative Republicans, liberal Democrats. So, but it's still the same two sides of conservative and liberal or left and right. That's just the truth of it. But that's what is, and something that we can recognize. And understanding that, then we should know you should not be worshiping one side or the other, or idealizing one side or the other. You should be seeking harmony, but listening. And that's not a government, again, of where we're worshiping people.
You know, again, as you just said, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but that's not what is. That's the ideal. That's the desired place. That's the ideal. But today,
And
nobody wants that.
what makes the Bible so beautiful in other texts and whatever I'll say in the sense of when we say prophetic is that we see these things happen cyclically as we go back full circle and talk about the N word and how things change over time. As things continue to move away from its original meaning, it degrades. And once it degrades, it falls. And once it falls, then it starts over. They start with that core truth again. And you see us, right? Start off with that ideal until it degrades and it starts all over again.
We have to leave on that note because that one could go into a much longer discussion. But I appreciate the discussion, and again, it goes back to where we started. Yes, the concepts and perspective change with time and culture, and people try to adjust to fit in that time and space, and to understand God in that time and space. But I think, as we just talked about, if we just go back to the core, to the beginning, love, reflect love in all you are. And if you reflect love in all you are, then all you do will be reflected in love. But most of the time we don't do that. You know, and I think, as you said earlier, and I always say, there's the way. And we may come to that way from different pathways, but that core, that love, that God-centered attitude and way of life is what matters. And most people don't have I'll use your term, they don't have a spiritual life, they have a religious life.
It's like this. Then having warriors for this way, warriors of peace, warriors of love, to help inspire that within people, to come along and talk about it and to hit their common sense, their reason with this love that they can see for themselves within their own hearts.
They're called Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm gonna leave on that. Love you, my brother.
Love you too.